Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome everybody to another episode of Positive Talk. I don't know what show I'm doing, so no, Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. I hope everybody's well today, and we're getting near the end of the year, kinda, sorta. Boy, this year's going really fast. They're going. The older I get, the faster they go. But we've got a great show for you today. We are going to be talking to a gentleman who is not only been clean and sober for several years, and not several years. I think it's 12 or 13. Is it
11.
11 years.
Yeah.
I knew I'd. Well, that's life. In the event, so 11 years, and he's written a book about his recovery and also his spirituality, his walk through all of those things. The name of the book is called "The Shadow of a Figure of Light." And with that, Cody Peterson is with us. Cody, it's great to have you on the show. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's fun. It's funny. It's fun that you're here because, I don't know if you've noticed, but when you walk into a grocery store and you start going up and down the aisles and you see, 4 or 5 rows of wine, and you go to the refrigerated section and you got tons and tons of beer, and then if they sell spirits, you've got tons of spirits. I wonder who buys all that stuff. What do you think?
Oh, well, yeah, I I did notice, by the way, but it's not me buying it anymore. So,
Well, congratulations for that. But my point in saying that is it does appear that and Rochelle's going to be joining us hopefully. Right now she's just a spinning little circle, so we're hoping that she's going to be able to get through. But no, my point in saying that is that I believe it's kind of an epidemic. There are lots and lots of people that are addicted, and then you throw in chemicals like fentanyl and all of that. It's a big deal, and the statistics are not very good as far as people getting through those things. So congratulations on being 11 years sober and also wanting to give back. By I know you work at some facilities to help other people and that are going through that, and all the things that you're doing. You've been sober 11 years. Was it like one day an angel came down and tapped you on the head with a wand, or was it a process that you had to go through?
I mean, that really is a beautiful question. It really, so, the word I want to use is numinous, right? Which is, it's almost like a nod from the unconscious. So I think it's more related to the angel tapping me on the shoulder, or perhaps the devil, and then a process that I was able to control, and kind of bring about through my own volition. That's the miracle of, it is such an epidemic, just to confirm what you said. And I think the reason that it's so hard for people to kick those bad habits is because really, I think the undertone is of a spiritual nature. And so the recovery process is also a spiritual one. And it's really a process that we can't explain, it's an ancient process, really. It's that old primordial experience that men and women and humans have been having since the earliest times. And I guess we use different symbols to try to describe the process, the God image, or whatever those symbols may be at any given point in history. but really it's almost like magic, you know. It's more like magic than rationale.
Yeah, you know, and I was just thinking to myself, if did you have to give up, like, I don't know, when you were in the process of getting clean and sober, did you have to give up watching football? Because I was watching football. I was watching football. There's two things. If you want to lose weight or quit drinking, don't watch any football games because
uh
that's all they play is commercials.
yeah, that's funny. You know, I actually got I got my act together in Las Vegas, and usually,
There's a feat all by itself.
well, right, you know, you'd think so, but the beautiful thing about Las Vegas is people move there because they feel a certain sense of freedom. They can really kind of let loose, you know. But a lot of us, I guess, end up kind of spiraling out of control and hitting bottom. And it turns out there's a really great recovery community in Las Vegas. There's a similar in New Orleans. You know, there's kind of a brotherhood there and a sisterhood that is really profound, just because we've all had such a similar experience.
Well, I have to tell you a quick story about Vegas. I used to be a traveling chicken salesman, and one of the places, one of the things we did, we'd have a convention in Las Vegas, and one of the guys that it was on my team was he had stomach issues. He knew he couldn't drink. It was very bad for him,
Mm.
and so we went to the casino, and of course we were sitting at a table, and this real pretty gal comes up and says, "What do you have?" And so, you know, I said, "I'll have a beer," and he started drinking. Well, next time I saw him, he was staggering down the hallway trying to find out what room he was in, and he had no idea because he had what is it about some folks? Is it a mental thing? And it's not a mental thing. Is it a chemical thing? When my brother had this, he had an on switch, but he did not have an off switch.
Mm.
So he drank until he could drink no more. Is that a thing, or is that more of an unusual thing than a big deal? I don't even know.
No, I really appreciate the question. I you know, I think this is one of those questions that I guess 12-step fellowships are really good at answering. And there's a different fellowship for each sort of compulsive behavior, if you will. And what the 12 steps tell us really is that these types of compulsive behaviors really at base are of a spiritual nature. It's kind of a Jung said that the alcoholic's thirst for liquor is essentially he says on a low level a thirst for wholeness or for union with God. And so it's my opinion that people who kind of maybe don't have an off switch, like you say, are really people who they're able to find a certain connection that they can't find otherwise when they imbibe chemicals or substances, right? If it gives them that sort of spiritual release that I think all humans really long for. And the nature of that relationship ends up becoming problematic over time, where they, you know, eventually it becomes destructive, and then that's when they lose the power of choice, right? So step one says we were powerless over our addiction. um and that really, you know, at essence is where the spiritual journey begins, is when a person hits bottom, and you know, from there they begin to kind of rebuild. You know, and that's where the going back to your first question, you know, was it an angel that tapped me on the shoulder, or was it the devil? Um you know, it was whatever it was. It grew out of that really dark time, you know, that addiction led me towards.
Did you find that in the process of regaining your spirituality, because we all have a connection to God. We all have or the source or the universe, whatever
Mhm.
you'd like to call it. But
Yeah.
a lot of times because of circumstances and living our lives and the stories we tell ourselves and the stories people tell us, we tend to lose that connection because we don't think we're worthy. Is
Mm.
is drinking alcohol and doing drugs one way of trying to feel more worthy? And I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful question. I think that um I think I think it is, because I feel like rather than, I mean, I guess the way I formulate it in my mind is that, and I agree with you 100% that all of us really don't feel worthy. It's sort of written into the code, right, of what it means to be a Western human. Since the fall of Adam and Eve, none of us have been worthy. We're sort of brought up with this underlying belief that that's the problem. And that maybe that manifests in all kinds of mental activity and self-shaming and fear and loneliness. And for a drug addict or an alcoholic or an overeater or a sex addict, whenever they partake in that compulsive behavior, then something maybe triggers in the mind that kind of, it sort of lowers that sensation of separateness and that sensation of feeling not good enough or not well, and it allows one to feel more connected. So I think it does. I think it does address that sort of Western mythological need that we all have of being reconnected with God.
And speaking of being reconnected with God, I'd like to introduce uh,
That's a great, whatever that is. It's, and da da da. It's beautiful.
ta-da. I'd like to. Well, first of all,
Oh,
we'll do that.
woo-hoo.
And Rochelle, it is Mercury in retrograde, for those of you who don't know what that is. And she's been suffering from a little bit of that. But Rochelle has joined us, and she is actually, I think, oh,
Hey.
she's good. She's actually even moving.
Yeah,
Congratulations. Good for you.
I'm so sorry for the delay, you guys. My Wi-Fi doesn't always do what I want it to, but I am back on track and I'm so happy to be here. Hello, Cody. I'm happy to join in with you.
All right, glad you're here.
Now, have you been listening in on so far, this has been a fascinating conversation.
Yeah, I've been listening off and on, and it finally reconnected full force. So, I'm curious on the next line of being reconnected with God because I think it takes some time to do that, and it's a continuous practice for sure.
But there is an easier way.
Mm.
And the easier way is a glass of Jack Daniels, followed by another one, and followed by, and if three are good, four is better. And until you fall over, and then you realize that wasn't the way. Is
Hmm.
it? But that's kind of how we think about it, though, isn't it, Corey or Cody?
I mean, I think that's certainly perhaps how an alcoholic, I mean, thinks about it, except for that very last line, which is, we fall over and then we realize, oh, I bumped my head. But I think a normal person might wake up the next morning and think, man, that things got out of hand last night. I'm not doing that again. And then, but come 10, 12, 1 o'clock, something in the brain starts to kind of change, and before you know it, they're at it again. So
It becomes a never-ending struggle because in the morning you don't feel very good and you're like, why did I do that to myself? And by the afternoon it's like, why don't I do that to myself? It's a weird combination.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Rochelle, I know that one of the reasons why I wanted to have you here, even though you are just a spring chicken, and I can say that because I used to sell them and know what that is, but you're just a wee little one, but you've had challenges as far as that goes as well. I remember the first time I had MD 2020 when I was 15 years old, and that goes back to 19 set. Never mind. And that was not a good experience. But you had some experience with that as well, and you're working your way through it. So I would like you to Cody is an expert. He's got the book out, The Shadow of a Figure of Light, and he's been sober for 11 years, and you're working on it. I would love for you to ask him any questions that you might have.
Um, Honestly, Cody, I don't have questions. But I love how supportive and knowledgeable about this that you are. I wouldn't have considered myself an alcoholic then, right? Because we never do. We're like, oh, I just have I just drink a lot sometimes. And then it became super, super often for me. And as I've gone through my healing journey, I realized all of it was kind of just to not deal with the things that were at hand that I knew were a problem. And rather than facing myself and conquering those issues and being aware of it and accepting who I was and what problems I had, I was just like, no, I don't want to deal with that. So instead, I tried to cover it up as we do with any sort of addiction. Um, and it made it to where it caused me a ton more problems. I mean, I had my whole life for me and I was going and things were moving, and then things got really hard. And coming out of an 8-year relationship, even at a young age, and then feeling like I had nothing left, I had to lose more in the process of alcoholism to realize what I did have. I had a Mercedes Benz. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever owned. And I worked so hard for it. But one day I caught myself at 2 o'clock in the morning, just chasing parties and what was next because I didn't want to come home and deal with myself and be alone. I had crashed my car over the landscape of a McDonald's,
Oh.
and I ended up
You missed the
stagnant on my
drive-through?
shoulder. No, I went through the drive-through, and I
You were
so
grabbing a French fry, and the next thing you know, you're over the
no,
bank.
yeah, and honestly, I even thought of that afterwards, like, why didn't I blame it on dropping something or doing this or doing that? Because at the time, it was the first time I was completely open and honest, especially with the law. And in my defense, there was 2 parking spaces before it had gone around, because you can always, circle your way around to go back out. And I just floored it, and I'm half a gallon in on sangria all by myself.
Mm.
And in the moment, I was like, I wasn't drunk. I just was angry. No, honey, you had alcohol in your system. I was 3 times over the limit. I taken responsibility. When the cops showed up, I told them exactly what had happened. Um, and I just had to stand up and take responsibility and accept what I had done and the mistake I had made. I had to lose my car and a lot of respect from people around me. And I think where I'm proud of myself for being able to learn from that was not jumping back into that game and being like, well, I still have nothing now, even more. So why not just keep drinking? Because I had taken a look at myself and where I was before that. And the whole point of trying to leave where I was at was to better myself, and I made it worse. So I had to take a look in the mirror and I had to fight my way through it. I am almost done with court. And I've done everything I've needed to, and I'm the healthiest and happiest I've been mentally and physically. So, I mean, some people learn a little bit differently, and I'm
Yeah.
one of those people who never really will learn the first time. But it taught me a lot about myself, and when I finally got through it, I realized that the whole point of me even going down that road was because I was hurting. I was hurting really bad, and I didn't know how to handle it.
And before we continue, Michelle, I just want you to know that I am very proud of you and the
Thank
progress
you.
that you've made. And
Thank
but
you.
Cody, I know you've been around a lot of people. This child is like 105 pounds soaking wet. A half gallon of sangria. How is that even possible?
Yeah.
Honestly, that was one of the lighter things. I used to go through a liter of vodka a day. So, um, that sangria was, that's why I told myself, I'm not really that drunk compared to what I had been drinking. And then I was like, honey, you have a problem. You need to address this and you need to do whatever it takes to fix it, even if it takes a lot of understanding and forgiving of yourself. And I think
That
that's what people struggle with the most.
no,
Mhm.
no, wait a minute. I want to make sure I get this straight. You said a liter of vodka a day. Now that's
Correct.
2 bottles of
Uh-huh.
0.75s. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And you're still alive? Go
Yes.
Cody, how is that possible?
I don't
It's
know. I got a
yeah,
fast metabolism. I'll blame it on that.
yeah. The human body can put up with quite a bit of abuse, you know.
Yeah.
But she's lucky. You're lucky, Rochelle. You were able to kind of get out early. A lot of
Mhm.
people, they're unable to do that, and they just they take it all the way to the end. So
Yeah. It took me a few months of doing it to realize that is exactly the opposite of who I want to be and the life I want to build. So
yeah,
I'm proud of myself, and I love to be there for other people who have been stuck in it for a while, because it just means they probably have a lot more hurting and forgiving to do of themselves. And that's a part of life. It's okay.
sure.
Now,
Yeah,
Cody has also been spending the last 11 years understanding why he was doing the things he was doing, and then he began to read things. And I haven't read a lot of Jung, but I would love to. Tell us about your journey going through kind of a spiritual reawakening and metamorphosis to become who you are today, which is, by the way, not who you're going to be tomorrow, which has got to be really exciting for you.
sure. It sure is exciting. Yeah. I've always been enamored with spirituality and religion. When I was a teenager, I had my troubles, and my run-ins with the law, and I had sort of I guess a religious experience when I was a kid. And I was able to. Did you want to?
Yeah, well, I wanted to say this is going to be important, so I want to make sure that we have lots of time for it, and we need to take a break. And by the way, we're talking with
Sounds good.
Cody Peterson. Get his book, The Shadow of a Figure of Light, and Brachelle's with us, and we're going to be right back because this is going to be life changing for somebody. We'll be right back.
All
You're
right.
listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald, and Brachelle is with us. She's acting as my co-host today, and much better person than me. And Cody Peterson is our guest, and he's an author. He has written the book, The Shadow of a Figure of Light, and he works very hard now to help people get through the addictions that I hate to say that we all have, but there is a way through. And so, Cody, you were beginning to talk about your experience that you had with God at a young age.
Yes. And I had an experience that kind of helped me, kick the bad habits for a few years. And it was sort of a mystical kind of spiritual awakening, if you will. And of course it didn't keep me away from, the drugs and alcohol. And eventually I wound up basically homeless on the streets of Las Vegas. And I'd been trying for over a decade to get clean and sober. And I finally did. And I came into the 12 steps. I worked through a 12-step program. I don't like to say which one in order to kind of maintain some anonymity. And I, and it was, the experience I've had since then has been, it's been one of just increasing a connection with the higher power, the source, the universe, whatever, as well as really trying to foster a connection with people, and the people in my community, my wife, my family. And I think all of those things are so important for people who are trying to overcome addictions of any sort, as far as you brought up Jung, which is my favorite subject, actually, Carl Jung. I discovered Carl Jung about 5 years ago. I had started reading Joseph Campbell again, who is sort of one of my I read a lot of Joseph Campbell over the years, and he mentions Jung a lot. And so I picked up Carl Jung's book, Symbols of Transformation, and read it. And I, as difficult of going as it is, it's pretty challenging to read Jung sometimes. But I really found my own story in there. And as I read 2, 3, 4 of his other volumes, his collected works are about this big. It's like 3 feet from one end to the other. It's a massive collection of books that he put out. And the books that I've read, they really, it appears that Jung himself had experienced a similar sort of transformation, I guess, that I had, and that I see that other people have had through working the 12 steps. And so I started to really try to look at that from a more sort of, something inside of me just was like, hey man, you need to start writing. It's too good not to say something about it. And so I started to look at it through the lens of like, how can I sort of formulate this into a coherent message, right? And try to tell people, I think, really what it is that's taking place in the 12 steps, and to really try to flush out spirituality in general, what it means to be a spiritual human being in the modern West, in Western civilization, not just in Seattle, but like, the whole kind of, for all of us, right? Because we all feel that our culture's sort of fractured, we're so divided, and it seems that people, I think it's good evidence really that, just the way that alcoholism and drug addiction are sort of, just devastating, families and our communities. I think it's evidence of the fact that we just don't really know where to turn to find that spiritual connection and human connection. And I think that, Bill Wilson, who authored the 12 steps, he wrote the book called Alcoholics Anonymous. He published it in 1939. So he's the co-founder of AA. Bill, he wrote out of the same sort of, I guess, mythological ground that we are all part of. This sort of fractured culture, there's been a lot of technological advances since the 1930s, but theologically speaking, Western civilization hasn't shifted at all. We're still the same. It's been the same for centuries. And there really is a problem that the 12 steps addresses head on very directly, which is how to really cultivate a connection with, in the midst of a culture that seems to have lost those connections.
We in many ways have lost our way to the divine and to each other, because we tend to I used to laugh at myself because I lived in a cul-de-sac for like 20 years. And so everybody would drive into the cul-de-sac, they would hit their garage door button, the garage door would go up, we'd go into the garage, we'd shut the door, and that's the last time I saw anybody in the cul-de-sac. It was years and I didn't know anybody's name. And they were my neighbors, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
But we tend to do that in our culture, and so we tend to get a lot more isolated and lonely, and we think about things that we probably shouldn't be thinking about and stuff. So so the togetherness and the social aspects of it are important, as are the spiritual aspects. I know that is an important aspect that I really believe, and I'm hopeful. And tell me what you think, both of you. I'd love both of your opinions. I really am hopeful that we are in a new time, that we are coming together, and that we'll, even as difficult as it is today, that we are going to begin to come together to realize that we're all one, and that we need to take care of each other, and we need to help each other live our best lives, and that there should not be any stigma attached to alcoholism or addiction, because we're all addicted to something, ain't we?
Amen. Definitely.
And on that note, I'd have to say, I bet so many of our listeners could understand. I would have to say, for me, one of the things that kind of made me kind of not know any different was I grew up just surrounded by alcoholism and drug addicts. I was raised by them, and that's all I really knew. So growing up, those are the kind of people that I felt most comfortable with. Those were the kind of people I got along with and I was drawn to. And I think the biggest thing of realizing where I was in my life was realizing that I had to shed pretty much everybody. And I needed to find myself and it needed to be about me, and that was okay. Because when you grow up in a certain atmosphere, that's kind of your comfortability, right? You don't really know any different. And so having all these friends that were, just chasing the party life and the people and um, not really taking care of themselves, it was the biggest realization rather than looking at myself was that I needed new people rather maybe nobody. And so I had to be rid of all my friends and I had to step back from my family and I had to realize these people are choosing to do and live the life they want, but I don't have to choose that. I don't have to be involved in it and I can still love them at a healthy distance while I take care of myself. So that was definitely the hardest thing. I had to get rid of all my friends and it
Mm.
hurt.
Sure.
Did you find that to be true, Cody?
Absolutely. I mean, these sort of, I guess, neuroses, they go back generations, right? And Jung says that the biggest burden that a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. And so I think that we sort of, it's almost like in biology when small animals eat pesticides and then bigger animals eat those little animals, and the pesticides tend to grow within the organism, up the food chain or whatever. I feel like it's kind of like that too with us with we sort of inherit so much of our just trauma from generations past and bad habits, and it all sort of just it comes to a head, and it seems to be coming to a head culture wide, as I mean, I make the point in my book that alcoholism is somewhat of a metaphor for Western civilization in general.
We're in a lot of trouble.
Well, yeah, but it is hopeful, right?
Exactly.
If we can survive it, then there's a good chance we'll come through the other side with a new perspective. And I think that the 12 steps do give us hope, it's like it's as if our culture is about to hit bottom. Hopefully it happens sooner than later, or maybe later. I don't know. Maybe we can miss it. But,
hopefully in Brachel's lifetime.
Yeah,
It ain't gonna be
hopefully.
mine. But
yeah.
by the way, we're
Need
talking
some
with
change.
Cody Peterson. He's the author of the great book, The Shadow of a Figure of Light. And we're going to come back and talk more about that. We need to take a station break. Stay with us, everybody. I always know when I'm late because we're having such a good time, I forget. So I got to do this. Be right back.
Okay.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
Oh, hell with Cody, that was great. And welcome back to Positive Talk, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and we've got a great show for you today. Brachelle is with us, and she is she works on my team. She's relatively new. She's got a lot to learn about a lot of stuff, but I'm committed to helping her do that as long as she's committed herself to doing that and to getting through it. Cody, I got to ask you though, is our lack of and our need for addictions, is that caused by the emptiness that we feel because we don't feel like we have a spiritual connection to damn near anything?
I mean, I think so. I think so. I think that, you know, the evidence would suggest that alcoholism and addiction is best treated through a spiritual means, which might also suggest that the lack of spiritual connection is what has caused, you know, alcoholism and addiction to run so rampant in our culture. And in fact, you know, I said before the break that if alcoholism is a metaphor for Western civilization, the metaphor is that it's sort of this materialistic idea that we have that something outside of us is going to fix how we feel inside, right?
Right.
Yeah. And
I think a lot of it also has to do with purpose, having a purpose.
Absolutely. Yep. I think so. Finding one's vocation, you know, Jung used the word vocation as a kind of a spiritual term. It's not necessarily about how one goes about making money, but really what is one disciplined about? You know, what are the things that what are we doing to try to move humanity forward? You know, like your podcast is a great example of that. Like you're doing something, you're excited about it. You're making a difference. And I think there is hope because there's a culture of this, you know, people really are seeking, you know, and I think that
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. And the nature of, I don't know, I hate to say it, but it feels like perhaps the old institutions that at one point provided that connection, they're no longer fulfilling that need. And so we're all kind of out here searching for our own sort of connection, our own myth, you know, and that's kind of where the 12 steps really come in, because they really do lead one, you know, towards, they lead one in two directions, really. One is the 12 steps guide one directly inward. You know, that you immediately begin to examine yourself, like your motives, your thinking, your feelings, your resentments, your fears, your shame, your remorse, and then they invite you to then turn and face outward and try to make things right wherever you've caused harm, which is really just more internal work, right? And then they encourage you to carry the message, to help other people to do the same thing. And so they're leading us towards finding meaning and purpose, and which was something that Jung also saw was necessary, you know. And so, and that's why, you know, in my book, I make this, I kind of explore that parallel between Carl Jung and Bill Wilson, because it's very interesting. They didn't know each other during their lives, but they were contemporaries, but they were each establishing these sort of spiritual processes, and they're so, the relation that they have to each other is very interesting. It's worth reading from a psychological perspective, from a spiritual perspective, to really, it kind of shows how, as humans, we're kind of all in this together, trying to move in the same direction, you know. And there's a few of us are sort of out on the edges, like pushing the limits of spiritual connection and expanding consciousness. And you know, Carl Jung and Bill Wilson were certainly two of those men, probably the two most important men in the last century, based on just the amount of change that's occurred because of them. You know, the 12 steps, it's interesting that, so Alcoholics Anonymous is estimated to have about 3 million members today. But in the Middle East, Alcoholics Anonymous isn't even the biggest 12-step group anymore. Narcotics Anonymous actually is quite a bit bigger. And so it's not just AA that's sort of infiltrated, the culture, but the 12 steps in general. Also, a lot of religious institutions have adopted the 12 steps. There's even some Christian, sects that they're kind of based on the 12 steps, right? And because they've seen that the 12 steps have so much, power in changing individuals' lives, that they've kind of had to sort of capitulate and maybe adopt them and try to utilize them in their own methods. Like,
Cody, if somebody wants to find out more about the 12 steps, is there something somewhere that you recommend a book that you recommend that they read? Maybe your book
sure, yeah,
would be
my
would
book's
be a good place.
a great place to start. I do, you can Google 12 steps, you can Google Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, but I would just caution people to be careful when they do that, because if you put in Alcoholics Anonymous, the first few hits at the top of the Google page will probably be rehabilitation centers that are trying to get clients. And so you need to be careful that you find the real websites. AA.org is how to find Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not sure what it may be, NA.org or Narcotics Anonymous, but I'm not sure exactly what those websites are. There's also typically in every metropolitan area, in almost every small town, really, there's going to be, if you look for your local kind of AA club or Alano club or something, then you find a phone number there, and there's usually almost always a willing member of one of those programs on the other line, just ready to answer questions and help people out.
And I like to say this when we have this kind of a discussion going, and that is this: if you feel like you can't do what you've been doing for a long time and you can't do it anymore, and you're down in the dumps and you're depressed, there's a number I want you to put on your refrigerator or wherever you're going to remember it. 988. It is a national crisis hotline, and that crisis hotline will put you in touch with people who can help you, be it with suicide awareness or with drug addiction or with getting a dose of Narcan or whatever it is that you need. They can help you. That's 988. I just wanted to point that out. So Rochelle, I know you're learning and you're going through this. You're having a great time learning about your own spirituality, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I loved how he mentioned about facilities. I grew up in Odyssey House, which is based in Salt Lake City with my mom. We were there for 3 years. I give all my praise to her. She has become the most powerful and inspiring woman that I could have in my life. Um, and learning about your spirituality is it's not like learning about you go to college to be a doctor. Well, there's all these paths and all these things you could take. When you decide to get in touch with your spirituality, in a sense, you're just really learning who you are, where you're coming from, what to ground to. I myself have had to call that national hotline, and I think back to those times that I didn't know how to ground my feet in anything, and I had no idea who I was. And I truly believe that the whole part of spirituality is to find your true self and realize how much power you have and how much you really can control everything in your life, which is also a very scary thing to realize. Because when I realized that, I understood that everything that I had chosen to do was my fault. And that's okay. That's how we learn. But being able to want to change that, and I mean, we're all connected by something, no matter what it is. And we all have, I mean, we're all human, we're the same race. It's not like somebody's a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Of course, we're all different, but on the inside, we're all the same. Our minds work somewhat the same, and having something to ground you and connect you, not only to who you are, but to other people and a higher power of belief. Like, sometimes I wake up in the morning and I go outside and I just shout. I do, because I know that whatever it is, it's listening. I'll take my feet off or my shoes off, call me crazy. I'll go up in the mountains. I did this 2 days ago in a thunderstorm, and I put my feet down in the soil and connected with plants. For anybody who does not have a living plant in your house, please go do that for yourself. It is so beneficial, because everything has energy, right? We're all connected by energy, whether we're human or not. Our plants can feel things, our animals can feel things. Everything that lives feels energy. And a part of spirituality is realizing really that you can be one, but you're not alone. So I think that's really big for everybody to try to find in their lives.
Now, that's an excellent point. But Cody, there are people that are listening to this going, "Oh, Brachelle, you're 25. What do you know? I've been trying this my whole life. I can't
Mm.
figure it out. I have no idea what even being grounded means. I can't. I keep telling myself stories that have happened. I don't even know all the stories that I'm telling myself because they're just real now to me." And Cody, how do you? You've
Believe.
done a lot of work in this area. How do you help people? Is it the 12 steps that you talk about? Can they get your book and that will kind of give them a roadmap? Because a lot of, especially men, we need a roadmap, because
Sure.
we get lost a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I volunteer at any number of facilities. I go in and kind of share my story along with some cohorts, and I just hand out my phone number. Um, I recommend, I'm a big proponent of therapy. I think that most people can benefit from having a good therapist and trying to sort of kind of parse out the mental, activity that's going on. That's helped me tremendously, both in my personal life, in my relationships. It was really beneficial even writing my book. The therapist was a great person to bounce things off and flush out ideas with. Um, I think that I think you're right, Kevin, that it's uh it's almost overwhelming. This thing of life is no easy task, right? And anyone who's struggling, it makes sense that we would struggle. Like, it's if we examine what we're left with and what we're up against, it makes sense that it's not so rosy all the time. And for me, writing my book ended up being a great help for me, because it really it kind of it gave me a way of looking at the world. And a lot of so the title's called "The Shadow of a Figure of Light." And I think what the book really did for me was it helped me to become more familiar with my own darkness, with my own sort of those things that I'm kind of compelled to do, but that I don't really love doing. Um, there's kind of a funny joke maybe in the 12 steps. I know it's bad for me, but I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it anyways.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. We wake up and we just kind of go on repeat, and we end up doing the same thing we did yesterday that we swore we wouldn't do again.
It's
And
like, why am I doing this? This is stupid.
yeah,
I'm doing it now anyway.
yeah. Jung says that compulsion is the great mystery of human life. Compulsion is the great mystery of human life. And I think that I was able to flush out what he meant by that in my book. And if I compare that to my story, my history, is that what developed for me out of the depths of my own addiction was a new perspective. The world kind of opened up. I found meaning, I found connection where before I didn't have any. And without those trials and that sort of plunge into the dark, if you will, I don't think that I could have ever really stepped into the light the way I have recently. And so it's very powerful to give meaning to one's own darkness to that extent. And that's what the 12 steps teach people to do that. Now, maybe people don't know how they can connect to their own compulsions. A lot of people don't even recognize that they have compulsions. Luckily, there's 400 12-step fellowships. So most likely, if we have any sort of compulsion or addiction or bad behavior, we probably qualify for one of those fellowships, right?
Maybe 3 or 4 or 5, you
Oh,
know?
right. Yeah, exactly. And so, it could be a journey. It could be a process of self-discovery to kind of, to check out a 12-step fellowship. And I know you had some issues with your brother, and I mean, Al-Anon could be a great program, because yeah, they're beautiful, because what you find there is people going through the same thing, and that who, hopefully some of them have found a way through. And that is a really profound, process to go through. So the shadow of a figure of light is that, that it's out of, so I make this point in my book that our own darkness, our own shadow becomes the root of profound spiritual energy. And that it's almost like a seed, that a seed doesn't grow if you just set it in the light, right? It has to be buried and be in that moist, dank soil. And then it begins to dissolve and it sprouts. And in much the same way, I think we're called to sort of really to try to understand our own darkness, and to really, just become comfortable with it and find self-acceptance in that way. And it's not easy by any means. I think it does require somewhat of a guru or somebody to take us through the process. A 12-step sponsor can help, a therapist can help. Our culture is like hyper fixated on the light, like our God images are all just really bright, and we're so focused on feeling good and looking good and I feel like we've gotten away from that ancient wisdom that is to look for the gift in the darkness. And because what we find in the darkness is actually it's the thing that transforms us, right? Without really experiencing darkness and being in the darkness, there's really nothing that compels us or motivates us towards the light. And so that it's an important journey.
I couldn't agree more, because unless you know what it's like to be in a bad country music song, you'll never know what it's like to live like that and to get through it and stuff. So we're talking with Cody Peterson and also with my friend Michelle, and we need to take our final break, because I've gone over time again. Just leave me alone. We'll be right back in just about 30 seconds. So please stay with us.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We are talking with Cody Peterson. He's written the book, The Shadow of a Figure of Light. And, Cody, I couldn't agree with you more. First of all, I want to say this to everybody, because we've been talking about this. I just want everybody to know that in the work that I've done, in the guides that I've talked to, the books that I've read, and the people on the other side, they will tell you this ain't easy here. You are considered a warrior if you come to this place to have this experience, because it is very, very difficult. Only the best of the best get to come here. And so from that standpoint, even if you're having troubles, even if you're feeling like your life isn't worth a plug nickel, number one, it is. And number two, it's okay. You're okay. You're going to be okay, but it's going to take some time. It takes some work. People like Cody can help you. The book that he's written, The Shadow of a Figure of Light, can help. Read Jung, read Neil Donald Walsh, read Gary Zukav, all of these folks that are interested in helping you to see a better way, to see the light, to get through it. And Cody, it really has been my pleasure to have you here. And I know Michelle, well, I won't speak for Michelle because you can't do that to girls anymore. You can't speak for so, Michelle, what do you think?
Honestly, I love everything about what you have to say, and I know I'm young. For all of our listeners, I know I'm young, but I have been through a lot of life, and don't get me wrong, it is okay to have a bad day. Maybe two, three, four, five, six bad days in a row. It doesn't make you have to go backwards, and it doesn't mean you're not improving. If anything, sitting with yourself and realizing that you're having a hard time and allowing yourself to have a good time instead of pushing yourself out of that is really where we find our power. And I love how you were saying, Cody, about like finding who you are and what you want to do. And that's one of the things I've learned, and I'm still continuing to learn and figure out is through my process of trying to be better. It's who do I want to be? Who can I be? And what do I want in my life? What am I going to do to actually make it happen? And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck because they're like, well, I could just be anything. I could do anything. Well, you have to really sit down with yourself. You have to get in touch with your heart. You have to sit and close your eyes and face your deepest, darkest demons because that's really where you learn who you are. They're teaching you who you can and don't want to be. And that's what I'm literally going through right now is who do I want to be? What path do I want to follow? What do I want to have in my life? Setting goals and understanding if I don't achieve those goals, it doesn't make me less than. That was something I struggled with in the beginning. It was like, oh, well, I couldn't wake up every day at this time and go on my walk and eat. Well, some days it just didn't happen. And then next thing I knew was 2 weeks where it was like, well, I didn't wake up on this time, or I didn't go on my morning walk, or I haven't eaten and it's 4 o'clock. And I had to realize that that's a part of the healing process. Not everything goes exactly how you want, exactly when you want it. It's about actually knowing how bad you want it and making it happen and striving forward. Because the best thing I tell people, no matter who you are or where you're at in your life, you only fail when you give up. So it
That's
really
it. That's right.
does.
Cody, I'm willing to bet that one of the 12 steps is okay, you fell off the wagon. Now get back on the wagon. Is that one of the 12 steps?
Well, there's step 10, which is I'm not sure if it's one of them, but we're all it's like if we don't get back on the wagon, we might die. So we kind of just do it naturally. We're driven to it, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
it's
very good. By the
it's
way, we're
certainly
gonna
the wisdom.
Cody, it's great to talk to you. This has
too.
gone very fast for me. We're gonna have to do this again if you would consent to it. And
Absolutely.
and we've got about a minute and a half. I want you to take that minute and a half and tell our audience anything that you would like them to know.
Sure. So I something that you said, Kevin, just made me think that I think when people are feeling really down and really under a lot of stress and perhaps struggling with an addiction or depression or anything that's really just almost too much to bear, if not too much to bear, is that when that's happening, we're really being called to something bigger and something greater, and that there's something deep down in the soul that is creating that situation, and within that experience there is the gift of transformation, and that it really is it's the soul's calling. Jung called it the self, and he said that the self often compels us and it drives us because it's trying to manifest through us. And it always begins with pain. It doesn't manifest any other way. That's almost the only way to experience the self really in the beginning is through those deep and dark moments. And so if anyone has those and out there, it's that just keep going, because this is it is the soul calling you to better things. So,
And therefore it can be the adventure of a lifetime. Because you were born great, you are great, and live that adventure like every day is special to you, and it will be. And Cody Peterson, thank you so much for being here. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Go
I
get the
appreciate
book.
having you.
Yes, indeed. Go get the book, A Shadow of a Figure of Light. And he'll be on the Brushwood Media Network. He's on YouTube. He's going to be he's going to be all over the place. So you'll find him. Just Google Cody Peterson. So thank you, young man.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Rochelle, thank you for fighting through technology and getting it done.
Of course, I love to be here always, and I'm always learning. So thank you for your time, Cody. We truly appreciate you. I'm thankful to hear all your words.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin